The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question to the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is back in session. Before I start, I just wanted to say that I am sorry. I am sorry that I took so long to upload this video, because the maker of the map that I use for the Ukraine war updates, for some reason went on another break. Apparently he went to some congresses, so I guess that's politics related or something. I don't know. But he went on a little break again to focus on his real life matters. And because of that, the map was largely unchanged for quite some time. But now I feel like the map is good enough to use for today's video. And without further ado, let's get onto it, shall we? First of all, we're going to talk about the situation in the Zaporozhye direction, or Zaporozhye direction. So basically, nothing has really changed, except that there are clashes right now in the village of Plavny, which is south of the town of Stepnogorsk, or Stepnohursk, which is a pretty sizable settlement in the Zaporozhye Oblast. There are some commie blocks here, as you can see, here, which is pretty isolated, distant, and in the town center itself. I think there is a central Rada building, if I'm correct. But yeah, if the Russians take this, then they'll try to head for the Konka River here, and then maybe put a stop to their offensive, and it would also put them within FPV drone range of Zaporozhye City. But yeah, overall though, nothing here has happened that much. In Galeapol direction, Malinovka, so not only is the village itself secured, but so are the fields south of it. And then going into the South Donetsk / Dnipropetrovsk direction, the Russians have been confirmed to advance outside of Shevchenko towards the border with Dnipropetrovsk. Apparently, they are already in the Dnipro region from the southeastern direction, so from the former Velika Novosilka front. And also, there was a report that popped up, which was posted by the Russian army group Vostok, or East, that they took the strategic village of Voskresenka. They provide geolocations and everything, but there was a problem with this particular update that they provided. The geolocation that they provided was too zoomed in, like in the video itself, and as a result, AMK Mapping, which is like one of my trusted sources in this conflict, has not colored in Voskresenka in favor of the Russians. Instead, he has kept it under AFU control, which I do think in circumstances like this is the wise thing to do. And just recently, in a recent Creamy Caprice update, the Ukrainians planted a flag, or had a flag, in Voskresenka. So, yeah, the village is still under Ukrainian control as of today, so I think Syriac should retract this capture. But it doesn't change the fact that it's going to be captured either way. And going a little further up north, the Russians have started fighting for the village of Zeleny High, or Zeleny Gai, or Green Valley as they call it in Russian or in Ukrainian. And there's a report that Russians are advancing quite quickly towards the village of Andrivka Klevstove. And also, the Russians have reportedly taken the village of Novokahatsky. Now, Syriac has not painted this in yet, and I think he will do it tomorrow or maybe later in the day. I don't know like when he'll do it as of recording this video, but it is confirmed by the Vostok group, and it's with proper geolocations that they did in fact take control of this village. And even AMK has told me that, yeah, this capture is for real. So yeah, Syriac should color this in, but also retract Voskresenka. But otherwise, though, nothing much has really changed in the Dnipropetrovsk direction. Novopavlivka direction, more like. And there is reports that Ukrainians are still holding on to this pocket here, though I think it's stupid to do with that because there's literally no more reasons to stay here. I mean, Russians have already taken most of these fields here south of Horykove, and Oleksivka, Novoukrenka, and Zelený Kut are all under Russian control, so I don't see a reason for them to stay there. They should leave, if anything. Now let's move a little north. We are going to go to the western Pokrovsk direction, or Krasnaya Amisk front. Pokrovsk direction, Krasnaya Amisk front, whatever. It really depends on you, but I tend to call it both. But anyway, let's talk about the situation in Udachny. Now, it seems as of recent, Deep State has confirmed that there is a Russian advance in the direction of South Udachny, and apparently the Russians have taken the series of tree lines here and have cut off Udachny from the southwest. And apparently, now that they have consolidated their hold over these tree lines here, I wouldn't be too surprised if the south of Udachny falls largely without a fight. Or maybe it will fall without a fight. I mean, I don't know, but Udachny's pretty cooked anyway. But with this news here, especially with Syriac putting this in the gray zone here, I wouldn't be too surprised if Udachny ends up falling to the Russians sometime later this month, or perhaps in August. Its days are numbered if you ask me, and once Udachny falls, the E50 road will be cooked. Like literally, the FPV drones will be able to control basically everything going on this road, which will essentially put Pokrovsk in a cauldron, and also it will threaten Sergivka too, which is a large village outside of the border with Dnipropetrovsk, which is on the way to the large city of Pavlograd. But yeah, Udachny is in big trouble, and to be honest with you guys, I wouldn't be too surprised if we get news in the future that the southern part of the village is taken by the Russians. Deep State, as of this recording, has not updated for today's video. I mean, like, they haven't, like, posted an update as of recording this, and because of that, we don't know. Maybe by the time we get to the next video, Udachny will be mostly under Russian control, maybe not. Who knows? But I keep an eye on this village if I were you guys. So next up, we got the eastern Pokrovsk direction, or eastern Krasnaya Amisk front or direction. A lot of bad news for the armed forces of Ukraine as of late. It has been geo-confirmed, by the way, that the village of Mykolaievka, I mean, Syriac has not painted it in yet, but it has basically happened, that the Russians have taken the village. And it also doesn't help that I think he's not doing himself any favor by keeping Myro Lyubivka under Ukrainian or in the gray zone. I think he should just color all this in for the Russians. And there's also reports that the Ukrainian defenses outside of the strategic town of Rudinsky has collapsed. Razin has been taken. Most, if not all, of Buykivka has been taken. Most, if not all, of Novotoretsky has been taken by the Russians. Fedorivka has also been apparently taken by the Russians. And also, the Russians have broken through this industrial zone here, which would put them at the gates of Rudinsky. Russians apparently have FPV drone control over these areas here, like the roads north and south going into it. Like, there's literally not many ways to get into this town. So the Russians are probably going to be able to enter this place, likely without many issues, unless there is a big Ukrainian counterattack that prevents them from doing that. But, like, as I said, it's Pokrovsk, as I said earlier, is pretty much now in a cauldron. And once Rudinsky falls, it's pretty much game over for the Pokrovsk direction. I think Ukrainians are going to pull back, sort of like how they did in Selidova last year, like near Halloween. And once they lose Pokrovsk and Minograd, then nothing is pretty much stopping the Russians from heading towards Dobropila, and also heading for the Dnipropetrovsk region in the western direction. Nothing will basically stop them from doing that. I mean, everything here is going to basically be under Russian control. Like, everything here. You're going to see like an Ugledar like flower bloom that will take place after Pokrovsk falls. It's literally a massive victory, logistics-wise, PR-wise. I mean, like everything for the Russians. Pokrovsk, without question, will be the armed forces of Ukraine's worst defeat in 3 years. Avdiivka, Bakhmut, Ugledar, Selidova, Velika Novoselka, none of those defeats would topple Pokrovsk. This would be the worst defeat that they would take to date. Maybe it would be their biggest defeat since Mariupol. I don't know. Well, yeah. So, yeah, the Russians are trying to take this industrial zone and Terrakon here, and once they're able to do that, then Rudensky is cooked. But we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen because a large portion of these areas here, all these fields, are in a gray zone, so anything can happen by the time we get to the next video on Sunday or Monday. And, yeah. So let's also move to this part of the Pokrovsk front, or I think it's pretty much now the Konstantinovka front, if I'm correct. So Ukrainians retook Popov Yar, but the problem, though, is that the Russians counterattack, and it appears that they have retaken at least a good chunk of Popov Yar, and Russian, by the way, MOD has claimed control over the village, which I don't know why they did that. But also, Ruzin Yar, the Russians have broken through here, and as a result, they have established control over a good chunk of the village. And then moving a little further south, east, the Russians have taken most of the central part of Yablonovka, which would put them in a good striking distance of the Klibambok pocket. And Ukrainians also had retaken control over the village of Alexandro Kalinove, but I think this victory is going to be short-lived after the news in Yablonovka. I think Russians are going to eventually make a comeback here, and as a result, Ukrainians are probably going to get kicked out here because of the problems that are growing in the Toretsk direction, which is evolving more and more every day into the Konstantinovka front. But this is the Konstantinovka front, but this is the Toretsk front, which is soon about to be extinct. So, what happened here? The Russians have taken full control over the village of Leonidivka, and they have also taken control over the village of Novospassky. This is one of the major suburban villages here outside of Toretsk, but the big one, like the big enchilada here, however, is Shesher Benivka. And once this village falls, that is it for the Battle of Toretsk. It is all over, though I would say that the battle for the city of Toretsk is already over, but the battle for the suburbs, though, is not. But once all this is taken, then Toretsk can no longer be counterattacked by the armed forces of Ukraine. And I also think that the Ukrainians are going to also retreat from Klibambok and Katarinovka, largely without a fight, due to the growing logistics issues that are taking place in this area. I just don't think they should waste their time here, knowing that the inevitable is coming. Russians have also taken some places outside of Delivka and Bila Hora, and they have also taken full control over the village of Stupachki. Russians have also been reportedly advancing in the direction of Chazov Yar, but we don't have confirmed reports yet. And there's also reports that Russians have been further consolidating their gains north of the town of Chazov Yar, but again, that's pretty much it. Not much news coming from the Zelina Dolina direction, but I can assume by now that after the recent advances north of Ridkodub, that we can pretty much conclude that the Ukrainian counteroffensive here has failed, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians were to kick out the Ukrainians from this pocket here in the distant future. And then going a little further up north, it appears that the Russians have broken through here, as you can see, north of the village of Boriska Andriivka, which is not far from the strategic town of Borova. Russians have also advanced outside of the village of Stepova Novoselivka here in the Kupiansk direction. And then there's also reports that the Russians have advanced further in one of the recent deep state updates, that they have advanced into Moskovka. And if this were to be true, and if the Russians were to take control of this village, then pretty much Kupiansk is in a full-blown cauldron. The Russian MOD actually confirmed that these villages are already under Russian control, but there's no evidence whatsoever to back up those claims. But a Ukrainian soldier from Kupiansk has already said that the city is already surrounded by the Russians. So, yeah, they're in a cauldron. Wouldn't surprise me if later this year, maybe at the near end of 2025, that the city falls to Russia. Maybe early 2026, but we can pretty much already write this place off for the armed forces of Ukraine long term. And then going a little further up north, the Russians have consolidated their gains outside of the village of Milove and are closing in on the villages of Ambarne and also on the village of Katnij. I don't know how further they're going to go, but we can assume that very soon the Russians are going to be able to also advance and maybe try to take the village of Chuhunivka. All this being in the Kharkiv region. There's also a questionable report that the Russians have taken also the border village of Datyarny. Now, I don't know how credible this is. The Russian MOD and the group of forces north announced the capture, but they haven't provided geolocations for this. But if this were to be true, then this means that the Russians would open yet another front into Kharkiv Oblast. Again, as I said to many people, I think their goal is to reverse everything that they lost in September 2022 so that they can not only do a referendum here, but to also ensure that they'll be able to deploy more troops, like from a legality point of view. So, like, they can claim the Kharkiv Oblast as theirs. And, yeah, so it would basically give Vladimir Putin the legal basis to, use more resources in Kharkiv Oblast. Group of forces Sever are scattered throughout supposedly 3 parts or 4 parts of Kharkiv. 1, 2, 3, and 4 supposedly. Very interesting stuff, though I don't know how sustainable that strategy is, but I digress. Now, in the Sumy direction, it appears that the armed forces of Ukraine, they launched their counteroffensive into Kindrativka, but it so far appears that the counteroffensive there has failed. Andriivka is still under Ukrainian control, despite the fact that AMK claimed that they had recaptured it. I mean, I think they have always controlled Andriivka for a while now. And also is now confirmed from Tetkino that Ukrainians have been ousted from this area, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians try to take Resivka. And also, all these fields here are under Russian control too. And then going back to the Sumy direction, it appears that most, if not all of Yanakovka is under Russian control. And once they take control of this village here, they will be able to establish a base of operations, though I don't know if that's going to be the case, because just recently the Russians have advanced into the strategic town of Myropila, which is outside of the Russian border village of Gornal. Now, the advance here was quite surprising, but apparently the Russians have already advanced into the central part of the town of Myropila, and in my opinion, I do think this is going to be the base of operations for Russia in the Sumy region. Not Yanakovka, because Yanakovka is simply, I don't know, too small or prone to drones or anything like that. I don't know. There's reasons to believe that I don't think it's going to be that base of operations. But yeah, Myropila is currently contested right now. Russians have control over a decent chunk of it. And yeah. Now, before I get going, I should mention that the Ukrainians have announced a new prime minister. It is a female from the city of Chernigov in northeastern Ukraine. And, Ukrainians apparently have been begging Trump to send them more defensive weapons and such to defend Kiev from the Russian strikes and drone attacks. And Keith Kellogg was just there for a few nights or so. I think it was almost a whole week, and the Russians have not attacked the city because of that, because they didn't want to provoke Trump even further. But Trump has also said that he has had enough of Vladimir Putin, and he's going to implement tariffs and sanctions on Russia in 50 days if they don't stop going after Ukraine. But I doubt Russia is going to listen to those warnings. And if you ask me, I feel like 50 days is more than enough time for Trump to chicken out and to just let Russia keep on doing what they have been doing for the last year or so, which is constantly advancing every day. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. I hope you all found it informative, entertaining, etc. And I'll see you guys in the next video. So have a great day, everybody, and peace out. Bye-bye.